IPC Sunday School, Class 6, Lesson 14. David, the greatest king of Israel. Dear students, please make sure that you read the reading portion, that is 1 Samuel chapter 16 to 24, so that you understand the context of the lesson. After the leadership of Joshua, the people of Israel were ruled by judges. Later, the people demanded a king in line with the surrounding nations, and God said to Samuel to anoint Saul as the first king of Israel. When Saul committed disobedience, God chose David instead. David is one of the most important personalities in world history. We can consider David as a tall mountain peak among the many personalities in the Bible. Jesus Christ is called the Son of David. Instead of calling him son of Abraham or son of Jacob, David is exalted to such high position. David is famous as a wise man, musician, mighty warrior, famous poet, a great king, and as a man who always experienced God's presence in his life. His life was a mixture of both good and evil. Though his life was full of goodness, yet also he was trained by sin. David was never an idol worshipper, and he was very faithful to God in all his ways and was a true worshipper. Even when he fell in sin, he made all efforts to get right with God. David was the most important king of Israel. David was the youngest of the 8 sons of Jesse, the grandson of Boaz, the Bethlehemite of the tribe of Judah. Dear students, in the textbook it's mentioned that David was from the tribe of Benjamin, which is wrong, and kindly get it corrected. David also had 2 sisters, Zeruiah and Abigail. He was very handsome and was brought up to live in the knowledge of God. He was a shepherd boy who took care of his father's sheep in the wilderness. He was very brave and had saved the sheep from the lion and the bear. He was also skillful with the harp. When the Israelites were fighting against the Philistines, David was sent to the battlefield by his father Jesse to bring news of the well-being of his elder brothers, who were soldiers under King Saul. There he heard the challenge put forth by Goliath and also how he cursed the God of Israel. David could not bear the cursing. He trusted God to help him destroy Goliath. Now Goliath was 9 feet and 6 inches tall and had a shield of 5,000 shekels in weight. David accepted Goliath's challenge and took 5 stones and a sling. David put a rock in his sling and swung one of the rocks at Goliath's head. Goliath fell down and David defeated Goliath. David became famous in Israel as a warrior. From the moment that David killed Goliath, Jonathan's heart was close to that of David. Jonathan loved him as his own soul. The word Jonathan means God is merciful, and they made a covenant with each other to strengthen their friendship. Even though Saul was king, the virgin daughters of Israel sang, "Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s." This provoked Saul to anger and jealousy towards David. Though he had promised Merab, his elder daughter, in marriage to the one who slays Goliath, he did not keep his word. But Michal, Saul's younger daughter, loved David. The word Michal means stream or brook. David married Michal for the price of 200 Philistines that he killed. Palace life was not peaceful for David. King Saul attempted to kill David many times, and in fear of King Saul, David ran away from the palace. After fleeing from the palace, David took refuge with prophet Samuel. But King Saul came in pursuit of David there. David escaped from there and came and met Jonathan. Jonathan informed David about Saul following him, and from there he fled to Ahimelech, the priest of Nob. He was very hungry when he reached there, And he took showbread reserved only for the priests and ate it. And David went to Gath. When he reached Gath, the people identified David. They caught him and brought him before Achish the king. David pretended madness before the king and escaped from the place. After escaping from Gath, David came to the cave of Adullam. About 400 men who were dissatisfied in one way or the other with King Saul joined with David. He became their leader. Then they went to Moab. David even dined with the king of Moab. Upon the counsel of prophet Gad, David departed to the forest of Hereth in Judah. Saul was still hunting for David, and he heard that Ahimelech, the priest of Nob, had helped David. And in anger, Saul came to Nob and killed 85 priests. Only Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, escaped. He took refuge with David. The people of Keilah were saved twice from the hands of the Philistines by David. And when Saul heard that David was in Keilah, he summoned his army to go down to Keilah to capture David. Then David, along with the 600 men with him, camped in the wilderness of Ziph and moved camp to the wilderness of Maon. Saul left pursuing David when he heard that the Philistines went attacking Israel. And during this time, David came and camped at En-gedi. After defeating the Philistines, Saul came to En-gedi in search of David. And there were 3,000 men with Saul, who retired alone to spend the night in a cave. Now Saul was all alone in that cave, and this was the same cave where David and his men were camping. Though his companions advised David to slay Saul, David did not agree to it. And David went and cut a piece of Saul's garment. When Saul woke up from his sleep, he went a little far from the cave, David called out from behind and told about the opportunity he received to slay Saul. When Saul heard about it, he felt ashamed and left pursuing David.